I cannot believe I have to say this about Joker 2. Oh boy. Before we start here, I'd like to offer a content warning. An instance of violent sexual assault happens in this film. It isn't shown. I won't be showing much of the scene immediately leading up to it, if I can help it. But there might be other instances of me and my brother making jokes alluding to it in the live commentary. And I will be discussing what it means for the film later on in the script. Oh, there will be no such jokes in the scripted segment. Also, that's important. For clarity's sake, no, we're not making light of rape. And no, we're not making light of its victims. We're dealing with an uncomfortable feeling that comes with watching a movie, knowing that will happen eventually, and taking note of the absurdity of this being a thing that happens in fucking Joker 2. All of that said, if you're good to continue, then let's continue. I guess that's Joker 2.
Joker 2.
Joker 2. Joker 2. Joker 2. Joker 2. Joker 2. Folie A Deux, guys. That's it. I'm Joker now. Joker 2, Folie A Deux, is what happens when you give a vent piece a $200 million budget. I've heard of viewer hostile experiences, but I don't think I've ever been curb stomped by a film before. This movie hates me. At least I think it does. If it doesn't, then it doesn't even think I exist. It certainly hates everyone else, though. It hates you, it hates Joker. It is Todd Phillips, I don't know if it hates him. It hates DC, though. If that sounds scattershot and disorganized, that's because it is. I cannot come up with any other way to talk about what I've witnessed, so I'm just gonna run down the list. Not much segue between each topic, some things probably coming to me as I go. That's the best I got. First though, the synopsis. As always, major spoilers, but also for Joker 1 this time. Following the events of the first film, Arthur Fleck, aka Joker, has been interred at Arkham Asylum. Eventually, he meets Harley Quinn, a woman who is inspired by his staunch resistance against society and the tools who keep it running. They cause some trouble together, they maybe have sex, and then she's gone. Anyway, Arthur's also involved in a trial that decides whether he lives or dies. He's dead to rights concerning the murders he committed, but what is left for him to prove to the court is whether or not it was Arthur Fleck who committed those murders, or a separate Joker identity. After an hour and a half of boring legal procedure bullshit, the thing that happens in prison showers happens to Arthur, and suddenly he decides he doesn't want to be Joker anymore. The next day, he's declared guilty, but then a bomb goes off, and he almost escapes, but he doesn't. Also, Harley Quinn doesn't like him anymore because he's not Joker, and she only liked him for being Joker. And he goes back to jail, and then a random scary man stabs him to death, and he dies, probably, maybe. So first things first, if you're one of the 300 people who watched the first Joker video, oof, then you might remember that one of my biggest complaints about it was how it flirted with the idea of a non-literal narrative. That whole girlfriend subplot embodied that, but then other parts of the movie felt like they were either partially or wholly happening in Arthur's head, and I felt like the film didn't have enough of a grasp over this methodology to warrant such a lofty goal. It wasn't an art film, and it shouldn't have tried to be. Mind that when I say that this whole movie is basically doing that. This film, more than the first, wants to be an art film. One of the main gimmicks of this film is that it bounces between two different aspect ratios, the tighter one representing literal events, and the wider one signifying partial or total influence from Arthur's imagination. On the one hand, this does take the mystery out of the first film's presentation. We now know exactly which parts of the story aren't literally occurring, to some degree or another, and it does render the most fantastical moments of the film more grounded in reality. On the other hand, it doesn't actually bring anything interesting to the table, and it neuters this film's own ability to create intrigue. Anything interesting that's happening, you can instantly look at the top and bottom of the screen and realize it's not actually happening.
Please, you're messing with the acid in my pocket. Oh, stop! My face! I'm becoming Two-Face!
What? What? It's not real.
It's not real, no.
Was any of that real?
It was.
Okay. So it took that flawed presentation style, refined it into its worst parts, and banked its entire identity on this horrible idea working. But hey, if we're talking about drastic changes to presentation and identity, then I guess it's probably more important to mention the other part of the film's core identity.
And the other person may want to commit crimes, it may want to sin, it may want to
evil voice in my head.
It makes me want to sing!
Yeah, it's a musical. And now I need to make a couple things clear. One, I don't like musicals. I hate when the story's halted for any reason in any piece of media, regardless of how self-aware the halt is and what the paused progress consists of. You might say that plenty of musicals use their songs to further their stories, and that gets to the second problem. I cannot get immersed in musicals. When everyone stops what they're doing to break into a big massive choreographed routine, I am forcefully reminded that none of this is real, and regardless of how well executed it is and how much work has to go into it, these are actors on a soundstage. That's a big reason as to why I generally don't enjoy stage plays very much. I just can't get immersed in them as easily. But even if you like musicals, you're still going to have a problem with this movie.
Is every song in this movie gonna be, licensed?
I think
Is this
so.
a jukebox musical?
I think so.
This is Todd's real biggest crime.
In my opinion, I think this formula can hypothetically work. I really like seeing music being recontextualized to mean completely different things depending on how it's used and how it's performed, especially when it comes to official covers or YouTube remixes and mashups. But I am well aware that for the general musical enjoying audience, jukebox musicals are the epitome of lame. So bear that in mind going forward. Now, disregarding my own biases, I can admit that the musical parts of this film are executed pretty well. What, they don't match tonally at all with the first film, or what it was going for? I'm not sure what to tell you. This is Joker 2.
Are we doing this? Are we actually doing this?
For now, like I said, the song set pieces are very well constructed and performed. Each actor brings a lot of energy to these performances, and while it never feels natural shifting from story to song, the songs themselves do fit the places where they're inserted. They're cliched, sure, and oftentimes the lyrics are super on the nose, but that's pretty much every musical for me, so it doesn't bother me too much. Most of the songs have their own sets built to accommodate them, and all of these look fantastic. But easily my favorite detail is that, in classic form, Joaquin Phoenix went above and beyond and learned a full tap routine for one of these musical segments. I'm sure there were more things he brought to the film that improved it, likely in the improv department, but for the moment, I'd just like to appreciate a sort of lost art in the film acting world. Sorry if I sound kind of old head here.
You know, props to fucking Joaquin Phoenix. Even if I cannot guarantee you whether he wanted to do this or not, but he's a good actor.
Yeah.
He speaks to one of those foregone things that you'd expect of an actor, that they would actually pick up a new skill for the movie they're doing, instead of just standing around and then letting the stunt double take the rest of it.
Yeah.
Talking of skills and talent, one thing Phoenix surprised me with was being able to hold his own sonically opposite Lady Gaga as Harley Quinn. I'm not aware of any previous singing roles he's taken in his career, unless he sang in Brother Bear, so it may be that I should have expected this. Oh, but actually, he was in that Johnny Cash biopic, so maybe he did good there. Regardless, it was a very pleasant surprise to hear some good singing come out of his mouth. He hits notes very comfortably, only really faltering when it comes to the tone of his voice, but I can forgive that for several reasons. Chief among them being because I think a lot of the singing he did was captured on set, not in a booth. Now don't get me wrong, I'm sure separate tracks were recorded, and I'm sure some of those booth versions were spliced in at various points during the film, namely during the actual musical segments that have their own dedicated sets, but it sure sounds a lot like some parts of the final cut include singing on set. If it doesn't, then massive kudos to the audio department for tricking me into thinking that. When it comes to the technical execution of the musical parts of the film, I don't have very many complaints. I can't believe I'm saying that about Joker 2, again, but it's true. One other pleasant surprise was that the reverse of that sentiment about Phoenix matching Gaga is also true, in terms of actual performance given. Likewise, I'm not familiar with Lady Gaga's acting career, I only know her for her music, damn good music at that. I know she was in the most recent A Star Is Born remake, but that's all I can come up with off the top of my head. Going off this movie alone, though, I can safely say that I'm more encouraged to check out any other films that she's played a major part in. For what this film is going for, she manages exactly what's required of her. A disarming front that pulls you into a false sense of security, and even when she's outed, she maintains that front so hard that it's difficult to be certain whose side she's really on at any given point. But when the idea of Arthur being the Joker finally gets dispelled, she doesn't come off like her world has ended, she's just upset that her new obsession has stopped being fun to play with, and she no longer has an excuse to run around acting wild. Even if the film had absolutely zero merit to it, I would appreciate it a lot for giving me a chance to see someone I wouldn't think of as an actor do their thing on the big screen. That's one of my favorite things about watching movies, and it's a big part of why I'm not very drawn to summer blockbusters. Though it also helps a lot that she's not just emulating Margot Robbie's performance. This movie, even as it is now, would have been brought down so much more if Gaga was just going for the exact same Harley Quinn as every other Harley Quinn in pop culture right now. I really don't want to stop the run of positivity I've got going here. Once I do, it's not coming back. So I guess to close it out on a high note, the film does present a pretty unflinching depiction of the US prison system, specifically mental wards. It's no One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, but, it holds its own. It doesn't have very much to say in terms of politics, but for as little of an active role the prison and its guards play in Arthur's story, they never fade into the background. At any given moment, you're constantly being reminded of how poor the living conditions are here, and how cruel the guards are for basically no reason. One detail I appreciate a lot is, unless I'm forgetting, the film never actually makes it clear what anyone else is here for, so it reinforces how arbitrary the guards' cruelty is. You, and they, can justify it as, these are criminals, they probably deserve it, but without any satisfying closure as to what anyone here is even guilty of, it's never quite as simple as deciding they all deserve this inhumane treatment. Likewise, the justice system is portrayed as a media circus. In real life, it's up to the judge whether or not filming and photography is allowed in the court, so it's not entirely facetious to represent it in this way. Regardless of the realism, though, it's fascinating to watch the process of the entire world slowly waiting for the inevitable result, constantly crying out for a man's head to roll, yet at the same time somehow have a group of people so dedicated to the defendant that they seem nearly as large in numbers as the opposition. It gives the whole court proceeding a larger-than-life feeling, and it replicates that feeling of two massive echo chambers slinging mud at each other whenever a major political event happens in real life. The only real improvement I would have liked is to see both sides eventually growing to care more about the event and hating each other rather than actually caring about the person, as has happened so many times in reality. But as we will come to see, there was no chance this film would be about anything but Joker. Not the character, but the film.
So is this meant to be like a legal drama? Are we supposed to be like actually wondering whether or not whatever?
Is this going to be the rest of the movie?
I hope so.
Whew, time to rip off the bandage. I mentioned earlier that this movie hates a lot of things, first film included. In addition to the aspect ratio's meta-storytelling, the entire movie essentially acts as an interrogation of the first film. These lenses include a psychological evaluation, the perspective of Arthur's immoral actions and their consequences, the maniacal fans who misunderstood the film, the blind haters who never gave it a chance, and the weird people who claim to identify with Arthur's struggles yet had no experience with any of his struggles. Only the first two are represented by the people called upon to testify at the trial, though. The rest of those perspectives are seen through the mob outside the courthouse, the prison guards, and Harley Quinn, respectively. So even when Arthur isn't literally on trial, Joker is always on trial. The film is still observing and reflecting on how the first film was received by the world at large. Unfortunately, what that ends up meaning is...
this whole movie was just Todd Phillips complaining about Joker.
I didn't want to make this movie.
Guys, I never wanted to make this movie, but I guess I had to.
I was also plenty critical about the first film, don't get me wrong, but I could still muster up a compliment or two. This film is so intent on reading Joker in a negative way that it blatantly ignores a lot of what it had to say about literally anything that wasn't Joker. Not Arthur Fleck, but the Joker he becomes. No mention of the flawed but admirable attempt at representing mental illness, no mention of the stark representation of the reality of poverty for the disenfranchised, no mention of the fantastic character writing for a flawed yet understandable victim. Just a bunch of Joker's the bad guy, he did the bad things, you didn't get it if you thought he was cool, look at how he hurt these people. Granted, I actually really like how they handled Gary's inclusion in the movie. He sort of disappears after Arthur kills the bully dude in the first one, but during his testimony here, he actually reveals that he was in police custody while Arthur was doing his thing on the Murray Franklin show. Not for having committed a crime, but to keep him safe in case Arthur decided to finish the job. Not only that, he still experiences the lingering trauma of that day, watching a man get brutally murdered, thinking he'd be next, that cruel scare Arthur gives him in jest. It's a welcome reminder from the movie that just because you tell someone you won't hurt them doesn't mean they'll be able to take that to heart. More relevant here, just because the consequences of the main character's actions aren't present in the story, that doesn't mean that they don't exist. It promotes thinking more deeply about the bystanders and cape shit, the normal people who get saved, or watch the disasters on TV, or in some cases, don't get saved. Shockingly mature observation from this movie, but if you want to add onto the list of things Joker 2 did better than Zack Snyder, there's an entry for you. Aside from that, though, the movie remains focused on painting everything related to Joker in a bad light. That includes you. At no point in the film appears a positive representation of someone who even interacted with the first movie. And that's more literal than you think. There was apparently a TV movie made about Arthur's crimes that aired in the few years between the events of Joker 1 and 2, and literally everybody who has interacted with it in any way is some kind of idiot or antagonist, yourself included. Todd Phillips created a literal representation of the Joker movie in his Joker 2 movie, just to say that fictional movie is lame and you're an idiot if you liked it. I didn't watch that movie, Todd. I'm not even convinced I watched the movie you think I watched. One especially bizarre thing that I can only assume is Todd taking out his anger on the audience of the first film is the extent to which he goes out of his way to make Arthur suffer in this movie. Consider that Arthur's main arc in this movie follows him being publicly ridiculed, insulted, and indicted, literally, in front of an audience and on live television, and the other central part of the story is a woman who's only into him for some inexplicable obsession with the bad shit he's done, and who wears him and a faux poverty appearance for the fashion. Let me rephrase. This movie is about the mentally ill loner who's prone to violence being mistreated by literally everyone around him, but he deserves it though. Also, the only female to show him any kind of affection is faking on him and only wants him because she's some bougie freakazoid wannabe troubadour, and she sucks too, but he sucks more. This entire thing is an exercise in Todd Phillips taking an avatar to represent the Sigma male fans of the first movie and torturing it for 2.5 hours. Now, normally I'm fine with a director doing what they want. I'm all for the artist's vision, but one, I'm also all for death of the author. This movie never allows you to forget that Todd Phillips is watching you from just over your shoulder, making sure you hate every moment of this film. But even considering that, somehow he went so far that I have to draw the line. You remember I mentioned the essay thing earlier? Now is when I talk about it, so skip to this if you'd rather avoid that topic being discussed in depth.
No! That is not subtle symbolism. Is Todd Phillips now a real filmmaker?
So, Joker gets raped in this film. It's a harrowing scene, nothing graphic is shown, but the build-up to the event is incredibly dramatic. In fact, this is probably one of the most tastefully executed scenes of this nature that I've ever seen in anything. The event isn't shown on screen, there's no extended exposure to screaming or shuffling sounds, and it isn't glorified in any way. How it is that the film which uses this to punish its own main character got that right, I will never know. But it goes deeper than that. It isn't just that I'm 100% convinced that this is Todd essentially taking this avatar for Sigma males and raping it. He somehow managed to make it a setup payoff thing. Earlier in one of the trial scenes, they mentioned that Arthur was sexually abused in his childhood. I have no idea if Todd thought this was a thing in the first movie, but I'm like 50 bajillion% sure that it wasn't. So if that is the case, then they retconned Arthur to be an SA survivor just to rape him again. And consider what that choice ends up saying when we take the whole film into context. Arthur, the apparent evil thing that latched onto a chance to cause trouble for his own selfish, incomprehensible needs by pretending to go insane, gets raped, and then he stops being the Joker. What did he mean by this? That the Sigma male crowd would drop the Joker act if they just got laid? That they haven't experienced real trauma, and if they had, they would stop being so selfish? That the people who hated the first film blindly for whatever reason would do something like that to the people who identified with Joker? If I'm being honest, it could be any of those, but I don't think that that's what Todd intended for it to mean. I said it before, I think he just wanted to take this thing that so many stupid people grew to love and identify with, and hurt it, maim it, destroy it utterly and completely. And then that wasn't enough either, so in its moment of weakness, he killed it in the slowest and most painful way possible. It's genuinely a bit frightening to put it that way, but I wouldn't be saying it if I didn't think there was at least a chance that it's true. The one last thing I want to mention, and this is just something that irks me in particular, this movie gets added to the long list of films which include an insulting explanation and portrayal of dissociative identity disorder. You might know it as split personality disorder, thanks to Hollywood finding out the term existed in the late 80s and making absolutely certain that no average person would ever be able to get properly informed on the actual condition unless they go out of their way to research it for themselves. I don't want to turn this video into something else at the last second, but in short, there are people in my life affected by this condition, and seeing it so poorly represented in so many movies is just exhausting. And I was so much more willing to give this film the benefit of the doubt. The copium was so fucking strong here.
It caused a split.
No. No. Are we really gonna go with the Joker as a split personality thing? There is no way that's what we're doing.
It was the Joker who did it. An insanity.
I don't know about our defense.
This alternate personality.
See, this is what I'm saying. Like, it's the people around him are trying to spin this narrative of like split identity, whatever, and he's just like getting caught up in it because there's no way for them to actually understand who he is.
Yeah.
I hope that shows I wasn't just going into this film ready to dislike it. I genuinely thought that there might have been something here worth commending. Silly me. And even all of that, all that stuff I said earlier, even that isn't the most viewer hostile part of the film, if you can believe it. Not to me, anyway, the person who saw potential in the first film for legitimate reasons, who apparently doesn't exist. I think the thing that hurt me the most was the marketing. The main trailer for the movie says absolutely nothing about this anti-Joker narrative. If anything, it's advertising a film that sounds way better than this one. Some vague idea of Joker striking back at the world for trying to put him down even after he made his agenda clear on television. Barring the weirdly derogatory stuff this hypothetical film could say about people like Arthur, watching him unravel further, not only in the US prison system, but with an attempt at a Harley Quinn alongside him, would have made for an interesting film. If nothing else, not good automatically. The first film was certainly flawed and bad sometimes, but that doesn't make the whole thing bad. Given how interesting and varied the first film's female characters were, I think that this hypothetical film could have made for a really interesting Harley. Now, personally, I'm sorry if this is the fucking woke mind virus coming here. I think they should have kept the streak going for representing women of color. There was a really cool opportunity here to give a general viewing audience a glimpse into the lives and formative experiences of that demographic that the first film skimped out on providing. I get that that wasn't the goal, but considering the majority of people in Arthur's life are either black, women, or both, I think it would have made sense to take the sequel in that direction. Plus, a black Harley Quinn would have instantly sold some tickets. The people need a break from every fucking Harley Quinn post-2016 just being Margot Robbie. God, that's annoying. How is it that I ended both of these videos by lamenting on the movie not being some better hypothetical alternative? I mean, this is certainly not a Carnival 2. There's no universe where we would have gotten a Carnival 2. And that's the beauty of it, you know? This isn't just a hypothetical. It's the movie we thought we were going to get. It's what the trailer told us it was going to be. And that's the ultimate trick. The Joker's trick, if you will. Todd told us we were going to get a Joker 2, and then the moment we sat down, he slapped all of us across the face and told us to suck shit and die. He took the franchise with some legitimate potential, didn't like how it was received, and he went and stole it back from its audience just to kill it in front of everybody. And we couldn't do anything about it. He won. That's the long and short of it. He destroyed his vision just to get one over on the world, and as you can see by the reception of this movie, he indeed got one over on us. People are upset. That's what he wanted. I commend him if there weren't a chance for something good to come out of this. But I guess that's just twisting the knife. I don't know what else there is to say. He got me. You win, Todd. I hope it felt good for that 2.5 hours you sat there waiting for everyone in the first showing to leave the theater disappointed. Sorry this one's coming out a bit late, but hey, abstinence makes the heart grow fonder. That means this video will get a gashmillion views and everyone will love it. Thanks to the biggest of men for the rec, and if you have any recommendations of your own, feel free to drop them down below. I can't promise they'll be what happens next, but they'll go on the list. The list that currently has over 300 entries on it. Endless content, baby. If you want a little more control over when/whether your movie choice makes it on here, consider checking out the Patreon or Ko-Fi, links below. Speaking of, first of many, a very special thanks to the patrons, their patron, JustB. You help make this possible. Thank you very much. And to everyone else, thanks a ton for watching, and I hope y'all have a good day. Take care of yourself.